there are huge differences technically between 24-bit audio and 16-bit audio.
Now, so 1644, 2496.
Yes.
I mean, I guess first thing I want to do is kind of talk about the differences. And like, is 2444, you know, something in between, or is it just, it's two different dimensions, right?
Right. Now that's what I'm not quite sure with when they talk about 24-bit audio in all of the articles. It just says 24-bit. It doesn't say what the sampling rate is. The two work together in conjunction. But there's a huge difference between 16-bit and 24-bit in that 16-bit allows 65,000 different levels to be measured.
And that's like volume?
Yeah, volume and other, volumes and other things. And in the sampling the actual waveform itself, if you're at 44.1, then it samples at 44 times per second or whatever. With 48, it increases it that much. But when you go to 24-bit, it actually gives you 17 million levels instead of 65,000. That's a freaking huge leap.
I guess with the accurate comparison, because people understand video, they've bought HD TVs, they know, those dimensions.
Right.
Would a semi-accurate comparison be, the sampling rate might be the size of the screen, the number of pixels, and then the bit rate, the bit depth is how many different colors each pixel has.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of the vibe. How vibrant, how much dynamic range. Like the dynamic range goes from, I think it's 98 dB on 16-bit audio, 24-bit audio, it's 144 dB, which is almost the range of human hearing. So that's pretty damn good. Like when you get closer to human hearing, that becomes important. It's like the difference between 44K and 96K. Right. It's like, yes, technically our human hearing only goes from 20 cycles to 20,000 cycles. And obviously at 44K, 44.1, where the filter cuts off at like 22K or whatever, that's 2,000 cycles above the range of human hearing, so it shouldn't make any difference at all, but yet it does. And the reason why it does is because waves affect waves. So if you've got lots of high frequency stuff, it affects the harmonics of the things below it. And so that all adds up to an experience. You perceive it.
It's not just about the frequencies that you can actually
exactly.
It's all of them working
exactly. All of them create. Yeah, exactly. And that's what makes a great mixer. Like being able to separate these frequencies out, make them not mask each other, make them work harmoniously with each other. And that's the other thing about it. It's like literally, if you got a bad mix, at the highest sample rate, at the highest bit depth, it's just going to be bad, clearer. Like a clearer bad mix. Right. Clearly bad. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like a great mix is a great mix. You could do it at 28K. You know what I mean? A great mix will still sound pretty good. Right. I mean, it won't sound great. Obviously, 28K will sound really bad because that's where the rates get kind of crappy sounding, but you'll still be able to hear the drums kind of individually. You'll be able to hear the harmonies,
So, I mean, I'm not necessarily afraid to ask what you thought of Tom's article, because I'm not. But I mean, where did he go wrong?
I mean, there's just stuff that's dead wrong, and I've read his article once and screamed and yelled about it, and I don't actually have it in front of me to refute some of the things, but I will. I could go point by point, really.
Right. Well, let me go.
Because some things are
a few main things.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. And yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. This is the crazy thing he says, where he says 24-bit has a really low noise floor, which it does.
Right.
It has a lower noise floor than 16-bit, and it's because of the headroom, and it says while that's a problem in the studio where you're boosting sounds to be clear and loud, it's irrelevant to the end listener who is given a fully mastered noise-free version already. The fully mastered version just means it's limited to bejesus, and when you limit something, you raise the noise floor up, so you're just getting a louder version. The thing about that is that for normal humans, when they actually hear something that's louder than something else, they automatically psychologically believe that it sounds better.
Right.
That's just the way it works. Ears are the most probably psychologically foolable sense.
And that's as a wannabe audiophile, that's been the most frustrating thing, is because I'll read about the technical, benefits, theoretical benefits, and then I'll listen to something and I'll try to do, blind tests and try to trick myself. And after a while, I'm just not even sure if it's in my head.
Yeah.
Or if I'm really hearing a benefit.
That's the craziest thing about audio, because you can listen to a mix and your first impression of it is like, oh, it's screwed up. You know what I mean? It just sounds murky or whatever. Listen to it long enough, it'll sound fine. That's just the way your brain works and your ears work.
But so when people say that, when people look at the technical aspects and limitations and what the human ear can hear, and also it's not apples and oranges it is apples and oranges because it's not like the human ear, is digital. You know what I mean? You're kind of approximating, what a biological instrument can do to what the approximate digital.
Right. And what we actually know about because there's a whole lot we don't know. You know what I mean? But it's like you can trust your ears. I know when I made the switch to 48K 24-bit when recording, all of a sudden I got depth in kick drums that I hadn't gotten before. The transients were much punchier, it just like when you go to 96K and you're mixing at 96K, all of a sudden you start to hear how discrete things move in the stereo field, and you can hear tiny differences where everything kind of gets blurred at 44.1, and that's because your brain is like the way your ears work within stereoscopic thing. It's in order to find prey or to find predators. So an incredibly good mechanism for finding where something came from. That's what it's all about. It's all biology and trying to stay alive, right? Like our legs are only a delivery device for sperm. It's like to get sperm somewhere, you know what I mean? And this is what our ears do, keeps us from getting eaten and finds us something to eat. And it's really important when that quail's walking through the grass that you know where that is and you can kind of get to it. So you're literally able to hear things in 6 microseconds difference. Now 44.1K is not able to capture things that fast. It might catch like a transient or something in this, but probably missed it. You know what I mean? So things get kind of blurred in the stereo field. You don't hear the kind of clarity in a great mix. You won't hear just how clearly things are defined in the field. So,
okay, I want to kind of bring it to the practicality of like a consumer, like a listener. So, we've established that there is a huge difference between 16-bit and 24-bit. Now, there's this idea that the loudness and everything's so compressed and you lose so much dynamics that you're not even using 16 bits on a CD. And so when you go to 24, that recording isn't going to sound any better at all. Right. So is there some truth to that?
I think there's a lot of truth to that. I mean, one of the things that drives me insane as a mix engineer is I get like all these tracks from people, and they record, and they all record just as loud as they possibly can. Which
you mean in the studio? When the track, right?
When they're actually taking the track, they'll record it as loud as possible. What the great thing about digital and the idea of digital was they have this huge dynamic range, and so you don't have to record things as loudly because you can capture and maintain like headroom electronically.
Yeah. Is that just a matter of people being taught the old school ways and just?
Yeah, well, and that was part of one of the things in the beginning of digital audio. Everyone was saying you got to print as hot as possible to get all that bit depth. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it's like, but you're eliminating the reason why you have it, and just people didn't understand. You know what I mean? They still don't understand really. It's like most people don't know that when you record all your stuff super hot, then when you put your plug-in on it, the plug-in goes, I'm not ready to handle this, and so it's causing all kinds of clipping and stuff. And if you don't know it, you'll just think it's normal. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that's one of the reasons why stereo image collapses when you're mixing in the box. It's one of the, there's all kinds of things that occur in that. And it's like if everybody just turned the damn levels down, it'd be a lot better, because heck, the noise floor is so low in 24-bit that you can really record things at, very low volumes and be above the noise floor, which is great for like, classical recording and stuff like that. Like that's where it really, really shines.
Right. And I know that much. And there's, I have, what 24-bit sources I've been able to find, like I said, like on SACDs or Japanese shins or whatever. Like I have, I have like the downward spiral in 24-bit audio, and it sounds beautiful. I have a 24-bit system, running through that board that I had at your live show. That's my stereo.
Yeah.
It sounds beautiful, and so the question is that because of the format or because it was remastered to sound beautiful in 24-bit? In other words, can you just take an existing, recording out of some warehouse somewhere, export it to 24?
Actually, you could, because if you got the original master recordings and say they were recorded to half-inch tape, because like Downward Spiral was recorded to half-inch tape as well. Like the mixers were half-inch tape and the Panasonic 3800. And they were not recorded with a whole lot of like, compression, right? So the master tapes are just like slight bus compression, blah, blah, blah. The mixers just sounded good. So they're not overly compressed. So you actually do have dynamic range.
Before the mastering process.
Right, before the mastering process.
Right. So do labels have access to these to do that right?
Yes, absolutely.
And they can do that right. They can get the guys to do that right.
Yeah, mostly. I mean, maybe post Volume Wars, it's harder because now when guys are making, doing their mixing in their computers, they're just, putting L2 on it or whatever and making it as hot as possible. And then they send it to the mastering engineer. Mastering engineer, right. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. You know what I mean? Yeah. So a lot of stuff is, especially modern stuff, is being done super hot, super leveled, and it's just taking away that dynamic range. But a lot of old stuff, absolutely. Yeah, I think you're right about they're going to need to be remastered. Like that would be the ultimate experience, because then you could capture some of the dynamic range that we are not capturing now. You know what I mean? I mean, Jesus Christ, the range on an average record right now is probably 14 dB. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, it literally is like that. Like, so, on classical recordings you get real range.
Yeah, but none of our readers listen to that shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just to study, and they don't even know what they're doing anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
So when you listen to, the remastered 24-bit Downward Spiral, sounds beautiful. Percentage, how much of that is the format versus the remastering process? Or is it kind of like one has to come with the other? I
think one has to come with the other. I mean, to really capture what the format has to offer, you have to remaster. You have to do it. Exactly. Because, and especially...
If it's there, you have to use it.
Exactly. And especially with audio, it's like, a snare drum can sound awesome, but compared with the kick drum and the electric guitar and the keyboard, all of a sudden it loses everything it had. You know what I mean? It's like audio works in tandem with things.
A smaller bottleneck and
exactly. Right. And so it's like you have to listen to what you've got and make it work. You know what I mean? Right. And sometimes it means putting another snare or whatever. But it's like in mixes, like it's the same thing. Like you have to look at every step of the chain in order to make it work. And to me, the basic things to make it work, to take full advantage, would be to master specifically for, just like you master specifically for vinyl. That's one of the reasons why people buy vinyl now, is because they're mastering for vinyl.
That goes through my head. Like when I buy a vinyl record, the new album that just came out, are they just taking the CD and just putting on wax?
No.
Or somebody over
No, they like everyone I know.
100% of the time.
Yeah, everyone I know, that's what they do. Because the thing about vinyl, well, it's up to the artist, but it's also the way they master for CD. It would not work on vinyl. Like it will cause skips. It will the amount of low end, the way it's placed in there. You have to specifically master to make it work for vinyl. Gotcha. Like, because you're actually mastering to the IEC equalization curve for vinyl as well. So, because you can't put the low end in that's there, because if you do that, the grooves will be gigantic, and it'll jump off. The needle will jump off the thing. You have to temper it so that you know that.
Be the chronic skips.
Yeah, probably.
Well, I mean, that's comforting. So there's already an infrastructure for... It's not like they're going to take the master recording, send it to master, and then put it on, cassette, CD, and vinyl. They already have the process where they're saying, here's the CD mix, here's, the vinyl master.
Here's the vinyl master,
Right, and so they're just going to say, here's a 24-bit master.
Yeah.
So that's comforting.
Yeah, no, it is. I mean, it's an extra step for the label. It will cost a little bit extra, but hopefully that step... will have another niche, and that niche won't be filled by people stealing the music. It'll be filled by people actually supporting it. So hopefully that will, in the long run, that will be something that the label can make money on, the artist can make money on, and the consumer can have something that they really appreciate and enjoy.
I mean, it's finally. What would you say? I mean, like, kind of the barrier to entry to 24-bit audio is for a consumer. Like, how much do they have to spend on gear to make buying 24-bit audio even worth it?
You don't you don't have to buy like huge amazing speakers to hear the difference between, like, if you bought a 48K 24-bit CD, and they made it out of good quality CD, and you had a good quality CD player, like, somewhere in the
audio CDs you can't even go up that high. You need like an S8 CD or something. Like
yeah,
CD, right?
But if they created this thing where you could a format that you could actually listen to 48K 24-bit, you would absolutely hear the difference right away with your regular speakers.
I mean, not even like, studio, Mackie studio monitors. You like just your Bose.
No, just your system at home. You would hear a difference.
Even like with the home systems that, they color the sound anyway. They make it sound.
Yeah. Oh, and
you can still.
Yeah, exactly. You could still hear the difference. There's just a difference in depth, the way things, the fullness of things as they decay, there's just a big difference. I know when I went to recording stuff and, from 44 to 48 and when they went to 24-bit, it was just a world of difference. It made my life so much easier trying to get things to be punchy or trying to get things to, be more exciting. And I know that's a definite difference. Now, is it worth paying, $4 for a single as opposed to, I don't know, you know what I mean? That's your own judgment or whatever. But, and will it be, is it, I know it's 17 million, levels versus 65,000 levels of difference in the actual processing, but is it, 17 million times better, no, you know what I mean? It's not going to be 17 million. That song is not going to be better, and it depends on the mix too. Like, you know what I mean? If the mix is kind of crappy, but the song's good,
How much does that brick wall compression, brick wall limiting and loudness how much does that really just obliterate any benefits you might have had with 24-bit as a consumer?
Yeah. As a consumer, I would think it wouldn't be, like, it's just not worth it. Like, I wouldn't take something that was mastered for the current market, mastered for radio or mastered for iTunes. I wouldn't take any of that and convert it and.
Well, right, but so if
I'd remaster it.
If Iovine is going to say we're going to get 24-bit pipes, we're going to put all our audio out 24 bits. I mean, from what you know about the music industry and how they operate and everything, I mean, is it not even a question that they're going to get the pre-master version? They're going to put it through the right process, and you're going to get the benefit of 24 when they release it.
I would absolutely think that he's going to do that. Mainly with Iovine, my main thing of that is that he was an engineer. He was a producer in the day. He has amazing sounding records. He worked with Shelly Yakis for years and years. Like, Shelly is golden ears. Like, his stuff sounds amazing. Still sounds to this day amazing. And it's like, I know he has a love for music, and I think he wants to do that. Plus, it's also a great revenue stream. You know what I mean? For the people that care about it, like audiophiles, to hear music the way it was intentionally recorded. I mean, hell, it's hard to listen to a whole record when everything's clipped and at 100%. You know what I mean? It's like, it's much easier to listen to something when it's not distorted to start with, because I mean, literally everything you listen to in an iPod is clipped and distorted, like, just is. Yeah. But because it's loud, and it has to be loud, because if your song is quieter than the song that came before it, people are going to automatically psychologically think it's not as good. It doesn't sound as good.
With 24-bit, if somebody's going to be like, I got iTunes, I tried this 24-bit thing, and it just sounded quieter. It sounded not as good as my MP3s. Is that going to be a backfire?
I think that's definitely going to happen with the normal consumer. I don't think that they are compatible. You know what I mean? Like, I think that if you are a person that wants to listen to things with a fuller dynamic range, without all the excessive loudness war clipping and brick wall limiting, then you will buy a 24-bit iPod and you will listen to the songs like that. And when the Jethro Tull song comes in after the Audio Slave song, you'll turn it up a little bit because it was just quieter. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because and you'll revel in the glory of it, because there is a difference. You will, like, a person who's trained to hear it trained to know, oh, I just turn that up. You know what I mean? And then it'll sound, it'll sound, you know, the way I want to hear it or whatever, or it'll be the volume that I want it to be at. It's like, your normal listener, your 15-year-old girl, like, no, you know what I mean? It's not going to make a difference to them. And, you know, 99 cents for a song as opposed to $1.50 or whatever. Right. It's like, they're going to want to pay 99 cents. And you know what? They should. And consumers should have the choice. It's like, I should be able to go to iTunes and get the 44K 16-bit like CD version, not just some hacked MP3 kind of version. You know what I mean? Right. It would be like, I just think, and for longevity, for, you know, everything, you just want to get it as good as you can. And if there's an even better source out there, like, it'd be fantastic to have 96K 24-bit mixes where literally it would sound pretty much like it sounded off the half-inch. Like, I mean, I've done those things, and like, there's not that much difference. Like, I can't tell the difference that much, except when you record it, you don't get the kind of gloss that happens on the top. The mid-range isn't as pointy, and then there's that like nice little bump at 100 hertz that you just kind of like. You know what I mean? That's what tape does. You know what I mean? Right. 96K doesn't do that when you record to 96K, but you still have that kind of discrete stereo thing where things just sound bigger and wider and fuller without screwing with the phase to make them sound bigger, wider, and fuller like they do on iTunes with, you know, with that little spatializer plugin, which literally is just screwing with the phase to make it kind of out of phase. Right. So it just sounds wider.
Yeah. Do you think that, and this is just kind of social speculation, but do you think that it's a lost cause to hope that if you can get people listening to 24-bit and appreciating the nuances, could it combat the loudness war?
It might, but I think there's so much going against combating the loudness war. I mean, like, literally, when you figure out the psychology of people, which they have, and you're in an age of singles, because everyone buys to their iPods, and people buy 2 songs, maybe a song, maybe 3 songs, whatever, off an album. They don't buy whole albums. They don't listen to whole albums. They listen to shuffle. You know what I mean? When you're in a world like that, everyone knows that they need to have their song sound as loud as the next guy's. So in that way, like, when I'm doing my own stuff, would I prefer that someone sat and listened to the whole album and I had like a really nice compression overall, and it was not clipped and it was, you know, pleasant to listen to? Yes, I would absolutely love that. But I know that they're going to play my song, and they're going to play Goldfrapp, or they're going to play, you know, Nine Inch Nails, or they're going to play Lady Gaga, or they're going to, you know what I mean, and Elton John, and blah, blah. And it's like, all that stuff has to, you have to be in that thing, because psychologically, the human is going to say it's better because it's louder.
Well, okay, so in practical terms, how many mixes are even good enough? If, like, I mean, we're talking about like popular records. I mean,
right.
Like, you know, the Pearl
records,
records, Nine Inch Nails records, Queens of the Stone Age. You know, all the rock music that, you know, our readers are listening to. Yeah. How much of that is really going to benefit from going back to the masters, you know, the pre-master masters, and put them out in 24-bit?
I think for regular consumers, not enough. You know what I mean? For real fans who are looking for the experience without the clipping, you know what I mean? Because it really is a great opportunity to remaster records with an ear toward the art of making things sound great, because we don't do that anymore. Right. Like, literally, they're not done for that. They're for making it as loud and punchy and immediate, knock you over the head as possible, and just so your song is going to be as loud or louder than everything else on your iPod. That's literally what we're doing now, and fixing whatever is broken in the mix. Like, the mix was a little muddy, so they cleaned that up, right, or whatever, and then it's just get it freaking loud. Right. And it's like, so the art of mastering it isn't there as much as it used to be. You know what I mean? Like, different masterers had different sonic footprints, you know. And you went to a guy because of what he did with this thing and how much you loved it. Now you go to a guy who makes it loud. You know what I mean? It's a sad, sorry thing. But, like, to have the option, yeah, I think is really good. I think it's going to be really good for the consumer. Like, just like when they do vinyl now, and that's the thing about vinyl that's great, is that I mean, if you like clicks and pops, you know what I mean? Which I don't really like. Yeah, I don't really like clicks and pops, but it is the one place where you can buy a record that isn't clipped to bejesus with a limiter. You know what I mean? It's almost like when you get through mixing something, you're like, why did I bother mixing this? Because they're just going to compress the hell out of it.
I only collect vinyl. I only own vinyl. I mean, I buy CDs, I'll rip it, and I'll give it to somebody. Whatever.
Right.
But I collect a lot of vinyl, listen to a lot of vinyl. I get the records that I love the way they sound. I get them on vinyl.
Yeah.
If I can't find them in 24-bit, right?
Yeah.
And I see a lot of people kind of in that boat. A lot of hipsters are like, get it on vinyl, and then they have the shittiest turntable and the shittiest fucking needles, and they're like, this sounds so much better, right?
Yeah.
Like, no.
Yeah. But I mean, it's like, because if you have like the great needle, the great turntable with the great drive, and then you've got a really great preamp, a really great set of amplifiers, some really nice high-end speakers. Yeah. I mean, it's just, it's a Nirvana experience, you know what I mean? And you're definitely going to pay for it. I mean, $20,000 to $200,000, you know what I mean? Easily, you know what I mean? But, is it worth it? Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like if you can afford it, and if, you know, if you're addicted to it and stuff.
Well, I mean,
but to have the choice is what it's all about.
You know, there's been a lot of, like, there's the crazy debate that's been raging on among our writers and everything is, you know, audiophiles are suckers, and, you know, we're not rich, and so, but like for me, you know, I feel weird calling myself an audiophile even, but it was never, growing up, it wasn't about, I need this gear. It's like, I need to get the best possible sound out of this stereo I found in the attic. And so I got to learn about grounding and frequency and just, you know, just the signal length and signal to noise ratio, and just like nitpicking and getting the soldering iron out and figuring out, you know, what's loose and causing a buzz, you know, that I can hear. And maybe it's in my head, but I think it's here. And so it's,
and dealing with the nodes in the room, and like learning the physics, the acoustics of
the floor was like the first thing I did was like, oh wow.
Yeah, and then away from the wall, and
exactly.
What will the normal consumer really care that much? Probably not. If you're listening on earbuds, you know, that's your favorite. I mean, hell, I've watched kids walk around with their little iPod, you know, to their ear, just playing it through the speaker. I mean, it sounds like they're playing music through a spoon. You know what I mean? But they're enjoying it. You know, heck, why not? You know, I mean, the thing is, they can have their whole record collection in a thing that actually shoots video too.
Right.
You know, it's a great thing, and especially when you're looking at the technology of good enough. It's absolutely good enough for most people. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, 16-bit CDs sounded great to everybody.
I liked them because I liked them when they came out because they didn't have clicks and pops, and the noise floor was lower, so you didn't have the hiss in digital recordings that you did in analog recordings. And for me as an engineer, that was great. I loved that. I loved the fact that you could record through to digital, and digital sounded like what you were recording. When you recorded to analog, you always like lay that snare drum on the tape. Oh, I'm losing some 3K now because it's going to tape, so I'm going to, you know, add some back. Because stuff never sounded like what it sounded like on the desk. When you put it to tape, you brought it back, it sounded different. Turns out people started loving what that difference was. But back in the day, I know as an engineer in the 80s when I was doing it, it was like, I hated it. You know what I mean? It's like, oh my God, it just never sounds what it sounds like at the desk, you know? But, you know, once digital got good, because, I mean, old digital was not that great. You had to monitor through it in order to get what you were, because if you got your sounds at the desk.
When was that? I mean, like
94, 95, 96, when it was still like Pro Tools.
Like after Studio Vision.
Pro Tools 3. Yeah, after Studio Vision, Pro Tools 3, kind of like that. Right before Pro Tools 24. It's funny, Michael Beinhorn and I were working on Mechanical Animals, and we did a shootout on all the formats. And I had done most of Mechanical Animals, most of the early stuff on Pro Tools 3. It was before Pro Tools 24 came out. It was right at about the same time when Pro Tools 24 came out, like at the back end of the record. We had that. We had a Studer 800 Mark III machine, like the best analog machine ever made. We had an Akai sampler, S3000 that I have back there. We set it up so we had a Pro Tools 24 rig, we had a Pro Tools 3 rig, we had a 800, and we had the Akai sampler, and we were getting drums and stuff, and then we'd like record them, and then get the sounds at the desk, record everything to all 4 formats, and then play them back. And we played back the Studer 800. It just sounded awesome, crunchy, that great like second and third harmonic crispiness that it gets, and it was cool as hell. I always loved everything I ever recorded to a 800. It sounded amazing. Played the Pro Tools 24 back. It sounded kind of weirdly rounded off and hollow, kind of, you know. That was all, you know, how I could describe it, but pretty good, like pretty good. Like, especially for the convenience and editing, you know, was like, and you always monitor through it. So you don't really have this occur, because you can fix those things when you're recording, as you're hearing it. Pro Tools 3 came back, and it just sounded like the mid-range was out of phase and there was a blanket over it. I mean, it made me actually physically ill that I had recorded like almost the whole record through that, you know. But again, I was listening through it so that I never heard how badly it was translating it. I only got the sounds, and they came back exactly how I got them, and it sounded great. You know, the stuff sounded cool, but only because you're monitoring through it. You know what I mean? And so you realize you're doing a hell of a lot of engineering just to make it sound good, because you know. And then we recorded to the Akai 3000 sampler. Sounded like the A800 Mark III machine, best sounding thing we'd ever heard. Both Michael Beinhorn, who is an audiophile, you know, maniac, he was like, "Holy God, it sounds freaking amazing."
What format is that? I don't even remember.
It's 44:1 16-bit.
And so how do you explain that? I mean, it actually sounded better than the 24-bit Pro Tools.
How I explain that is the analog filtering process at the output. They had whatever their scheme was for doing their analog output, it just sounds freaking great. Yeah. Like and
that's just one of a million different ways that 16-bit is not necessarily
the be-all end-all.
24-bit is not necessarily good.
Exactly.
Factors.
Yeah. Because I mean, the thing with audio, and especially with audio, is like, you know, you turn something up, and you know, like the light is white, or it's blue, or it's magenta, or it's green. You know, in video, like whatever, you know, it's what it is. You know what I mean? In audio, it's what it is to the beholder, and there's a whole bunch of factors. Like, it's what the sound is, it's what the sound is itself, what medium you're playing it through, the coloration of the console that you're playing it through, the speakers that you're playing it through, the room that you're playing it in. Like, there are just a million different combinations of things, you know what I mean? The thing is, when you're thinking about doing the best, most sonically pure audio with the most dynamic head range and dynamic range and headroom, you want to use the best thing available. You know what I mean? And the best available in digital is 96K 24-bit. It's great. And it gives you a chance to master for the art and not for the commerce, which is another thing that probably Ivan will like. And there is a thing that he likes the art of music. You know what I mean? He's an old school guy. Like, he's not a bean counter. He's not an executive that came from Vivendi. You know what I mean?
Those people are in the industry. And so do you put it past certain people to hear the 24-bit version and say, this doesn't sound punchy enough. We're selling this at a premium. I don't like it. Let's make it louder.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Loudness all over again.
No, absolutely. The potential is there. You know what I mean? If there's someone able to screw it up, then they'll probably do it. You know, hopefully, it will be policed kind of like the way audiophile recordings are done. You know, it's like, you don't have loudness wars in classical recordings. You know what I mean? Like, people who are in it for that, you know, will balk if they hear something mastered and to clipping. I mean, right now you see guys on the internet, they buy the latest Chili Peppers record and they put it on, you know, they get the waveform and they look at it and they're like, oh my God, it's clipping all over the place. You know what I mean? It's like, that's where we're at, which is good. You know, buyer beware, you know, that's the caveat emptor.
I mean, that's my biggest worry, because I know I'm going to be buying up this 24-bit audio, and I feel like it's going to be a crapshoot. I'm going to get the fragile and 24-bit. It's going to sound great. I'm going to get, you know...
Well, because Trent will... he cares.
Sure.
Like Radiohead. Like those guys, they care. Sigur Rós, they care. Like,
what if I get, you know, I don't know, Blood Sugar Sex Magic, you know, in 24-bit, and it's like, I don't know, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, if they make it 24-bit off of the, you know, mastered recording, it's not going to be any better. You know what I mean? Yeah. But... You know, even though that's a great record, and it was mastered really well, actually, back then, because it wasn't so crazy with the volume wars and stuff. True. But like later recordings, you really have to worry about that, you know, and just how crushed they were when they were mixed, and you know, but you know, I mean, hell, compressed mixes sound cool too. So you know, I don't have anything against that stuff. I just really think people should have the chance to listen to something the way the artist intended it. You know what I mean? And I mean, I know a lot of artists now are just like, well, it's just gonna get, you know, we're just gonna crush it because we have to. You know what I mean? And you do. I mean, it's inevitable. You know, and you kind of mix for that. Like now, if I want to mix to have dynamics, I don't move the faders to make it louder and softer. I use frequency. You know, it's like I want it to be louder in the chorus. I bring in different frequencies to make it appear louder, you know, and because I know it's going to be crushed. So it's like, if I don't want it to sound like every K-Rock, you know, thing where it's like the verses are super loud and then the choruses are like a mosquito, you know, and, you know, and I'd love to avoid that. And I'd love people to hear the difference too. I'd love them to, you know, get a chance to hear the difference. And maybe we could affect the volume wars. Maybe enough people hear that stuff and they go, wow, this really is better. You know, if they listen to a whole record.
I worry that it's such a minority that's going to care.
Yeah. I do too. It just depends on if they decide to do it and there's enough people out there that make it a commercially viable thing, it'll happen. If not, you know what I mean? It's like,
but at the same time, it's not a scam.
No, it's
suckers out of audio files.
No, like unless someone runs a scam where they're you know just taking MP3s and converting them, upsampling them.
Right. Well, I mean that's not gonna fly.
Yeah.
With the message board kids, they're gonna run it through.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, right.
And
but I'm just thinking,
but there will be people that do it, just like there are people out there that fill up bottles of water from their tap and sell it as filtered water, you know what I mean? Like, or no, they sell it as like spring water or something. And it's like, cause that's legal, but if you say it's filtered, it actually has to go through a filter.
Right.
So you're better off buying filtered water than the spring water or whatever. Right. I mean, there's a shyster out there all the time, but to say that it's a complete sham, no, it's not, especially if those guys, especially if Iveen and the heads of labels decide to remaster specifically for 24-bit. If they're not remastering specifically for, it will sound it'll be a tiny bit better, you know, but it would be much better if they did the, you know, remastering specifically for it. And that will make it really, really worth it. So maybe it's going to be the caveat of remastered for 24-bit. And if that's the caveat, that's the one I'm going to buy. You know what I mean? Like that's what I'm going to buy. If I'm referencing a song for a mix or whatever, that's what I would buy. Like literally, honestly, someone says, you know, I want this record to sound like, you know, Breaking Benjamin. You know what I mean? I go, David Bendeth, he's pretty good. I'll go buy the 24-bit version, and I'll use that as my reference because that would be more.
Well, so are you going to do that math in your head, just like that was mixed by who? He knows his shit, so I'm going to get the 24-bit.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, that's something
absolutely
people have to train themselves for.
Well, and I think everyone should do that. As a kid, I know I was like, who produced that or who engineered that? Like, because there were.
I mean, that's how they think.
Yeah, but that was like the records that I bought, like, because I got into artists, you know what I mean? And when I got into artists, I would read all about what they did, and then it was like, oh, like Alice Cooper always works with Bob Ezrin, and then I'd get other records and I'd see his name on it and be like, oh, and I would like that record too. So I'm like, I like what Bob Ezrin does, you know what I mean? And so then I started getting appreciation for it, and that's when I started going, I want to do that, you know what I mean? Right. But like, those are the kind of things that would go through my head. And I know I'm not lying. I wouldn't just go download this, you know, the MP3 and use that as a reference. Like, I know if I'm going to be comparing my mix to another mix, I want the full quality mix because it makes a difference. Like in punch, in depth, in the way things.
Is it safe to say that no matter what, it'll make some difference?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely. But whether it's enough a difference to make it reasonable to a consumer for the money or for, you know, it's like for the inconvenience, you know what I mean? You won't be able, like 24-bit, you won't be able to put as much on an iPod, you know?
Yeah. I put my music on my Droid and it won't even play any of my 24-bit stuff, you know?
Yeah. And so it's like, then you do the trade-off. And sometimes it's, Well, I want to have a whole bunch of stuff on my thing so I can go to my friend's party and play, play my list or whatever. And, but it doesn't need to be, highest quality there because I'm not sitting in a chair in the middle of a room with my speakers at the optimum angle. And, it's like,
it was Newmark mixer.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, it's like that's when you do it. That's when it's important. And,
there's been a long time since I've seen anything that made it more valuable, to pay for something rather than,
No, absolutely.
Art has gotten marginalized.
Yeah. No, I fully agree. It's been a long time since there's been something worth, I mean, I know the people were getting ripped off for a long time with CDs, you know what I mean? Like, and, I mean, artists were getting ripped off. Like, Jesus, Sony recording contracts, they still have in the recording contract for an artist, they still have the codicil that they receive 100% of their percentage when they sell vinyl LPs. They only get 85% of it when they sell CDs because CDs are an unproven format. It's still in the contracts. Really? If you don't have a great lawyer and he picks that out and gets them to say no to that.
Format was used as just, vestigial from when they weren't sure if it was going to take off or not.
Exactly. From back in 1984, and it's still in there because they can get away with it.
So you could say that buying vinyl supports an artist more.
Oh my God, yes, absolutely.
For me too. I mean,
No, buying vinyl actually supports an artist more. Like that.
That's interesting.
It is. It's actually
because that's the proven format.
And because iTunes, actually, artists make less off of the iTunes sale, even less than a CD. Yeah. So.
I figured I knew that. And how much of that is Apple taking their cut?
That's Apple. Apple taking the cut. Yeah. Because there's no brick and mortar costs. There's no shipping. There's no blah blah blah. It's like they're literally just stealing the money,
Right.
And from the consumer, because I think it's 14 cents less or something. You know what I mean? And at the artist's cut, that's a big amount of money. Like so, but that's the way that works.
Well, I think we kicked Gizmodo's ass anyway.